Thank you so much to everybody for being here from really all over the world. Want to make sure you can hear me okay. Good. No? Okay. Um,
How's this? Is this better? Yeah? Okay, perfect. So no headphones. Yay. That's even better for me. Good. Okay, cool. So, welcome. It's a pleasure to be here with everybody. And yeah, it's been a long time since I've been here. I think, I don't know, maybe it's been 4 years or something, 4 or 5 years. Um, so we're going to start off with about 30 minutes of meditation practice that will be guided. And during this time, I'm going to introduce two techniques that will dovetail into one another that come from the Dzogchen tradition. Very briefly, though, before we begin, this is basically an open awareness style meditation. So for those who are well situated within Vipassana style practice or Mahamudra style practice in the Tibetan tradition or Dzogchen or even Shamatha to some extent, this will feel comfortable. So the key beginning piece being allowing your body to relax as much as you can. So take a moment to find a comfortable posture for yourself. Uh, Wonderful. And we're going to begin with a breathing technique called Vajra chanting, which has this way of helping the practitioner to kind of settle a little bit. And so it begins with, we'll be inhaling over approximately 4 seconds. You don't need to count it, but just have this felt sense of inhalation, roughly of 4 seconds, gently retaining the breath, approximately 3 seconds or 4 seconds, and exhaling over the course, roughly about 3 or 4 seconds. Or if you can do longer, that's fine too. As you're inhaling, you can imagine that you're inhaling the color white. And as you gently retain the breath, you can imagine that this transforms into the color red. And as you exhale, imagining that it becomes the color blue. And symbolically, white represents the enlightened body of the Buddha, red, the enlightened speech of the Buddha, and blue, the enlightened mind of the Buddha. Right? So what we're doing is just allowing our breath to help us to connect with and to ground ourselves into the fact that our body is the basis of awakening. Our speech is the energy through which awakening is demonstrated and shared. And that our mind is no different than the mind of a Buddha, right? This Buddha nature, Sujata Garbha, Sanskrit. Right? So for approximately 10 minutes, we'll do this breathing exercise. Inhaling white light. So white light, the inhalation, red light, the breath retention, and blue light, the exhalation. Inhaling white light, gently retaining, allowing it to transform into red light. Exhaling, blue light. And let your body lead you. You don't need to force your breath. Let it be whatever it needs. Just letting your breath lead you to a sense of stability and ease. Inhaling white light, gently retaining, allowing it to transform into red light. Exhaling blue light. Inhaling white light, imagining that your body is the essence of all the Buddhas. Gently retaining this light, transforming into red light. Your energy becoming the energy, expressive energy of all the Buddhas. And exhaling blue light, your mind being none other than the mind of all the Buddhas. Inhaling white light, gently retaining it, transforming into red light. Exhaling blue light. Inhaling white light, gently retaining it, transforming into red light. Exhaling blue light. White light, the nature of the bodies of all the Buddhas. Red light, the nature of the speech or energy, creative capacity of all the Buddhas. Blue light being the mind of all the Buddhas. And then very gently from this place of easeful relaxation, allow your body to rest like a mountain, grounded, fully present, like the element of earth. And now just let your breath be natural, coming and going as it does, trying not to control anything. Whether your eyes are open or closed in meditation, try to hold the view of non-judgmental, non-preferencing, non-labeling, open awareness, free of anything needing to be anything, free of control, free of everything. Let your mind be like a mountain stream, letting things come and go as they do, without control, without shame, without needing anything to be a particular way. And rest with spacious ease, free of the past, free of any anticipation of the future, free of this moment needing to be anything, free of meaning making and control. Just the direct experience of the nature of your mind. Sit like this for 10 minutes. Allow yourself to rest free of control, open, spacious, letting everything come and go. If you find yourself fixated on something, try to release the grasp and return to spaciousness. And gently bring yourself back to this group. And take a moment to just check in to see how it is that you feel right now. Okay. So the meditation that we just did, the both forms actually, we find in the Dzogchen tradition. And so the Dzogchen tradition is kind of interesting. It's essentially what we might call a Tibetan Buddhist form of meditation, although it came to Tibet from Central Asia. The specific location we don't really kind of know, but Afghanistan, Pakistan kind of area. The earliest kind of progenitor of this form of meditation was this person named Garab Dorje, who lived in the early 7th century. And he is very famous for developing this instruction. It's called the three words that strike the vital point. And I'll get into this in a little bit. But Garb Dorje had a number of students, one of which, though, was Vimalamitra, who brought this to Tibet and he aided in the translation of a lot of these early Dzogchen tantras, basically, these tantric literature, kind of presenting the view, like how to place the mind, how to be able to see things, how to understand your relationship to mind and the world around you, into Tibetan. And Vimalamitra was also one of the teachers of Padmasambhava, or Guru Rinpoche, who was kind of the first person to really kind of spread this widely in Tibet. And then from Padmasambhava, eventually the lineages come all the way down to this time. Padmasambhava lived in the early 8th century. And so this is a living lineage that comes down, from all of these people down to my teachers, and then down to me, and then down to us. So this is a living lineage that's quite old. Now, in the 1700s, late 1700s to mid 1800s, there was this great yogi named Shabkar, who was a very, very devout practitioner, spent a lot of time in meditation. And I'm going to share a kind of instruction that he gave using a crystal ball. And I like to do this because it's actually helpful, and he uses the crystal ball as a metaphor. So what he says, right, the mind oftentimes in Vajrayana is classified as having these three different kind of aspects: the Dharmakaya, the Sambhogakaya, and the Nirmanakaya. So briefly put, the Dharmakaya is the emptiness of mind itself. So is everybody here familiar or has heard the term emptiness in relationship to mind? Yeah, okay, good. Right. And then, so there's the Dharmakaya, which is the emptiness of mind and all phenomena. So what this means is that our mind has no real particular, inherent characteristics or qualities. And then if you stop and look, around the space where you are right now, look all around, and everything around you is just there, right? And everything around you doesn't necessarily, like, for example, I'm looking at a closet door that has a doorknob, and the doorknob is brass, right? But the doorknob doesn't say to me, "Oh, I'm brass." The doorknob kind of doesn't care, probably, that it's brass. Brass has a particular value, right? But I don't, when I look at the doorknob, I can look at the doorknob in a way that's very free of it having any particular qualities or characteristics. Everything around us has meaning, right? We wouldn't have things in our homes if there was no reason to have them in our rooms, right? And yet we create so much suffering for ourselves and others, and others create suffering for us as well, and themselves, because of all of these ideas we put on things, right? All of the valuation, all of the projections. I can say, uh, I'm going to pick on somebody in the audience. Hope has this painting behind her, this tanka, this traditional painting, right? So this will cause me to have particular ideas about hope, and that tanka, I think it's a tanka painting of Tara, right? And so this will make me think particular things about hope. Oh, hope must have these, this connection to Tara. This, why else would she have this, right? And while that's true, this is all this story making I'm getting involved in, right? I'm creating this narrative. I'm painting a painting of hope that may or may not be true. And when we stop to look, we're constantly doing this all the time, right? We do this in our daily lives. We do this at work. We do this with our family members. Who here has ever felt that you haven't had the space in some situations to truly be who you are, right? Because people have ideas of who you are. There you go. The first one up is Jorge. I hope it's not work related. Right, so we've all had this, right? Oh, you just see me as blah blah blah, you think I'm this, right? And then I think you're that. And what are we really living, right? We're living kind of a very bizarre kind of existence of constant reactivity, right? So this is how Dzogchen kind of connects back to the kind of essence of the Buddhist path, right? The suffering or this experience of samsara that we tend to have on a daily basis, sometimes minute by minute basis, has a lot to do with how we place our mind, right? It has a lot to do with how we relate to the world around us. So the first piece of this, these three modes, Dharmakaya, is the fresh openness of everything, including ourselves. Everything around us has this constant potentiality because everything around us, including ourselves, all phenomena, all experience, is primordially free and pure, right? Free of all the labels put onto it, etc. The Sambhogakaya is typically described as kind of this like energy body of it, but it's more, you could say, kind of the potentiality to experience things, right? It's the latent ability to see. So I see Leslie J, right? So the Sambhogakaya quality of being, here in relationship to Leslie J is that I have the capability to be able to experience Leslie J, at least, visually. And the Nirmanakaya aspect of all things is the form aspect of it, very broadly speaking, right? So again, if you stop to look around the space around you, you probably see a considerable amount of form. There's color, there's texture, there's again, if we really kind of get into it, there's difference, there's spatial relationships between things, etc. But it's kind of amazing, right? How much, how much stuff is around us. And then, of course, you can leave your home and go outside, and then there's more Nirmanakaya, form, right? And so Shabkar uses this crystal ball as a way of kind of describing all of these things, right? So he says that your mind, like this crystal ball, your mind is empty the same way the crystal ball is, in the sense that there is nothing inside of here, right? It is totally clear, totally free of any particular kind of labeled or projected qualities, right? And our mind is this way. We don't always experience it like this, but it is. The Sambhogakaya quality is the ability to actually see right through the sphere. And the Nirmanakaya quality is the form, see me right now, right? The form all distorted in this particular case, right? But that you can actually see form. So the more I hold it up, the more it gets even weirder, right? So all of this form. And so when we're meditating, what do we tend to experience is a lot of different, play of things, right? Play of thoughts, emotions. We could be sitting in stillness, and all of a sudden, blah, 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 bunch of ideas come, bunch of reactions, bunch of concepts. Maybe you're sitting, and then all of a sudden your eye catches the clock, and then you say, "Oh my gosh, later today I have to make dinner," and you start thinking, "Do I have everything I need to make dinner?" And all of a sudden, very innocently, right, you find yourself caught up in this play of the Nirmanakaya aspect of mind, all the form, all of the bubbling. That's right. So Shabkar, from the Dzogchen tradition, shows us, right, that our mind its essence is clear, right? Clear and free and vast. It has this ability to be able to experience. And then the Nirmanakaya form is everything that is experienced, including sound, through all of our senses, right? So through our ears, through our noses, our skin, right? Tactile sensations, temperature, taste, and of course, thinking. And so within the context of Dzogchen, so Dzogchen tends to be translated from Tibetan into English as great completion or great perfection. Right? And what this translation essentially is pointing out is that everything, our mind included, is perfect as it is. It's already complete. Right? So what Shabkar shows us, right, is the only thing we really kind of need to be occupied with, but not even really, in a neurotic way, is this intersection of experience and what happens next. Right? And so the what happens next piece is what our relationship to our suffering is basically predicated on. So as we sit and meditate, sometimes we experience stillness, right? And there's stillness. And from the context of Dzogchen practice, one rests then just into the stillness of what's happening. And then thought activity might come, right? Sometimes described as thought occurrence or movement. And so then we look directly into that. What is happening? What is where does this come from, this experience, this thought? And we become a little curious, not in an analytic way, but just this resting into awareness of the moment, relationship to what comes next. And sometimes when there's thought activity, it's often a reactivity. So we might feel emotion, right? We can feel anger. Oh, although nobody here is making me angry. But if somebody wanted to make me angry, you could go, just do something dramatic and then I'll become, angry or something. And then I need to then, in order to really kind of settle back into this naturally liberated state, let that anger go, right? Not hold on to it. Or fear, or sadness, or anything that comes. And so going back to Garab Dorje, he gave this teaching that, early 7th century that's still quite meaningful today, about these 3 words that strike a vital point. And the first of these has to do with this introduction to understanding what our mind is, right? And that's basically what this first term is introduction, right? Which means to directly understand our mind's nature, right? Which, again, from the Dzogchen perspective, is that our mind is basically pretty simple. It experiences, and it will either usually experience stillness, activity, or awareness as a result immediately. And then what we do with that impacts the next moment. So if there's stillness, and we can just settle into the stillness, right? Stillness meaning there's not a lot of thought activity, there's not a lot of labeling or projecting or, fiddling with experience that's happening in the moment. Then this moves into the next experience, right? The next thing that happens. If there's thought activity or emotional response or anything like this, then we look at it. If I become angry or some, or experience anger, and then I start to think of other situations that made me angry and how I don't like being angry, and then now I can feel myself get puffed up, and then I don't want to practice anymore. I get up and, oh, I'm gonna go yell at someone. I'm gonna go find a random person and just be a mean mean person to them. Right, or with feeling really sad, right? It's almost exactly the opposite, same process, but opposite effect, right? We kind of deflate, right? And so, this means our mind is not particularly sophisticated, really, right? It's really kind of basic, right? We experience, things happen based on our reaction to things, other things happen. If we can just let everything be, right, awareness begins to be able to be experienced, right? And what is awareness, right? So within the context of Dzogchen, awareness is called Rigpa, and it's this quality of mind. So the mind, in the context of Dzogchen or Ati Yoga, is not limited just to gray matter inside the skull, right? Nor is it necessarily limited to just the experience within our physical body, but mind includes awareness. And awareness, like if everyone stops for a moment and just settles into some kind of relationship with awareness and look, right, really look at the location of your mind. Is it just in your body? Is it in your head? Is it in your heart? Is it in your pinkies, your thumbs? Is it in the room that you're in? Does it radiate out from your body? Does it fill the space? Does it end outside of the room that you're in, or does it even expand? Yes, Murphy can't find it. Good. So these practices help us to begin to see that my mind, mine, maybe can't be found. And if your mind can't be found, then why are we always arguing? Why are we getting, so tense about everything? Hey, what if this mind was inherently pure? Wasn't just located within my body somewhere? What if it wasn't stainable? Right, so if we hear, and we've all had strong emotions, right? From which we, in the recovery from a moment of strong emotion, we might even feel a little like, oh, I feel a little stained, right? I feel a little something, maybe I need to do something to cleanse. But the reality of the situation is that that's not particularly true. We can feel guilt, right? For being a jerk to somebody or being, not being particularly pleasant. But is a stain left on the experience of mind? Right? If so, who here has ever gotten angry? Okay, some angry people. Who here has gotten jealous? You've experienced jealousy, exactly. Who here has experienced shame? We've all, right? Anybody who's alive probably has experienced these things. Now, have all of these accumulated experiences left a residue on your experience of awareness? Maybe. Okay. Yeah. Maybe not. This is the thing to practice with, right? Um, maybe that's an idea, right? And I see there's a hand raised, but we'll get to the questions in just about 10 minutes. Right, so the first point is of Garb Dorje's 3 words that strike the vital point is introduction, right? So the point here is that our mind is vast. Our mind is pure. Our mind is not located just within, some aspect of my body and my being. My mind can't be stained. It can't be removed, right? Nobody can steal it. And so also within the context of not just Vajrayana Buddhism, but find this in the Mahayana tradition as well. All sentient beings or all beings are said to have Buddha nature, right? Which is this kind of seed essence of our full awakening. And so this is an aspect of our mind as well. Right. And so once this is pointed out, and again, just like, Shabkar says, right, our mind is clear like a crystal ball, right? The Dharmakaya aspect, Sambhogakaya aspect is the ability to experience. So each one of us, when we were meditating, did you have an experience? Yeah. Okay, good. One person had two people had an experience. Right? And did you experience things? Yes, that's the Nirmanakaya aspect, right? All of the form, all of this. Oh, that was weird, right? Oh, that. Yeah. So that's like thoughts, different thoughts coming and going. And we sit there and we watch and we could say, oh, no, not that thought again. And then we feel, what do we feel? Tension or stress. All we were doing was sitting with what? Right? Conceptual mind. That's just reacting. Right. So the point of all of this, right? What this keeps trying to point to us is who is the problem? Me. Right? Just as much as we want to say you're the problem, I'm going to pick on somebody else. I'm going to pick on Saki. So Saki's the problem. Oh no. No, like usually we are the ones who create a tremendous amount of our suffering. Now, of course, I know that there's an interpersonal relationship to how well we can experience things in the moment. And so I don't mean to say if you find yourself in abusive situations, right, that you're still the problem. But the point is that most of the time we are deeply invested in creating our own suffering or propagating our own suffering. Oftentimes because we don't want things to be the way they are, or we need them to be a particular way, or we, expect, or this or that, or this or that. And it can be quite humbling sometimes to sit in meditation and we get a front row seat of all of this kind of stuff happening. Oh, I wish my mind was more calm. Oh, this, oh, that, oh, this, right? But the practice of Dzogchen really is about familiarizing ourselves with the nature of mind. So with Garab Dorje's 3 words that strike the vital point. The first is introduction. This is the nature of mind. The second is then decision. Do I want to experience this, get to know it better, or do I not care? Right? And really, all practitioners of Dharma at some point need to make this decision for themselves. This is a little bit like, maturing in our practice. When we begin to notice how much I am invested in my own unhappiness, right? Then we have to ask ourselves, do I want to keep doing that? Like, just very basically. So my mind is vast and pure and limitless, not necessarily located just within my body, and can't be stained, can't be stolen, can't be incarcerated, can't be, all of these things. Then why don't I fully actualize this? Right? And this is the second point, right? Is making a decision. So the first is the introduction to mind, the second is decision. And then the third is merely developing confidence in this by returning back and back and back through meditation practice, coming back to my experience of mind and phenomenon, this relationship between self and other, and really trying to get to that moment, right? This kind of fascinating, kind of like a linchpin moment of experience, 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 experience. And so there's this wakefulness that's necessary to be able to have a relationship to, so that we are aware of what is coming up in the moment. And then from that moment of wakefulness, we are aware of whether or not I am kind of getting subconsciously tripped up and caught in a, kind of little thought stream that goes this way, or a strong emotion that goes, no, that way, or some other thing. And so the practice of Dzogchen is really this practice of resting into this open, loose freedom, practicing with whatever is coming to us in the moment, whether it's a lot of thought activity, whether it's stillness, like no thought activity, or just the experience of awareness itself. Right? And as Jane points out, liberation is possible, right? Simply because we've begun to demystify this constant play of things that we tend to have very little control over, and yet we constantly are trying to be in control of. So, it's hard to sum up a tradition of such kind of depth, and it's been around for over a millennium, to a group of people in 30 minutes. But this is kind of what the key essence of the practice is meant to be, and I'm sure we'll be able to kind of pull out different threads in questions and answers. But this is what the kind of gist of the initial meditation session was directed at. We did this Vajra chanting or Vajra recitation practice, which is really just breathing as a way of stabilizing ourselves, right? Allowing ourselves to settle a bit. And then once settled, resting into direct, open, non-labeling, non-projecting, spacious awareness. Letting whatever happens happen. This is kind of like, it's almost like sonar, right? Turning on sonar. And then, has anybody been on a boat that has had sonar? Have you ever seen that? It's kind of incredible because you can see then not only the ocean floor, but you can also see big schools of fish if they're coming by. If a big school of fish comes, it looks like this massive thing under your boat, right? And really, awareness is just this. I've had this experience a couple times too, where maybe there's been a lot going on in my life and there's a lot of emotion there that because of the busyness of my life, I don't see. But then resting into awareness, it's almost as if the sonar goes on and you can see the big bodies of emotional stuff going on, floating by, some you'd rather pretend you never saw. Right. But the thing is once you see it, what do you do? Right? If you do this, that's not particularly helpful, right? You have to be able to process it, so to speak, right? But processing it with awareness means recognizing and letting it keep going. So I know we're not going to have enough time for the talk piece, so maybe we can move into the questions and yeah, and then before we move into the questions, just reminding people if anybody feels like making any kind of dana contribution to go ahead. And for those who can't, I totally understand as well. This is really I'm not here. I'm not here to get rich, and we all need to relate to the world. So let's go to questions. So I will answer one question from the chat box, the ones that are existing now, and then maybe if folks wouldn't mind, raising your hand with the hand raising emoji, then we can go through them one by one. But so Gabby had asked if we can go over what the white light, red light, and blue light mean. So yeah, so because this meditation is still kind of situated in the Tantric Buddhist kind of milieu, there's a use of kind of symbolic relationship to color to help us cultivate a particular kind of experience. And typically, white, red, and blue represent the enlightened body, enlightened speech, and enlightened minds, respectively, of all the Buddhas, right? It could be a specific Buddha, but in this particular case, it's all of them. It's also correlated to 3 mantra sounds: Om for white, Ah for red, and Hung for blue. And while we're doing the practice, we're just inhaling white light, like the quality of the enlightened bodies of all the Buddhas. Let me ask a question. Who here feels like when you become who here feels that they can become awakened in this lifetime? Okay. All right. Cool. Some. Now, whose body is that going to happen through? Yes, good. Your body. So this means that your body has all of the seed potential for awakening, right? And that's what that is. It is this, oh gosh, yes, this, you know? And then, so we inhale white light and it transforms into red light. Red light is correlates to the syllable ah, which represents the enlightened speech or energy or creative capacity of all the Buddhas. So when you become awakened, who is going to do the work to help liberate other beings? Yes. So now that you said that, you have to do it. So that's, so my body, my speech, right? And then whose mind is the mind of a Buddha? Yes. Yours, right? So that's what that means, right? So really what this is there's this kind of way our body responds on average towards settling with this kind of time delineation with inhalation, breath retention, and exhalation. So roughly, 4 to 5 seconds inhalation, roughly anywhere between 3 and 5 seconds retaining the breath, and roughly anywhere between 3 and 5 seconds, exhaling, tends to calm us down. Right? And as we relax, resting directly into awareness becomes a lot easier. Right? If someone were to walk into, I'm gonna pick on James Dove. If somebody walked into your room and surprised you from behind and went boo, and then quickly ran away, and you didn't know who it was, and it was very weird and destabilizing, and then someone was like, okay, now rest in the nature of mind. It would be a little bit harder than if someone came and massaged your back, right, and gave you a cup of tea or whatever kind of thing helps you settle, and then you settle. So this is what that does. And so the other, okay. And so one thing that is helpful with this is kind of keeping an ear out or a pinky on your somatic experience of the moment, right? We experience things not just obviously through our mind, although a lot of Buddhists in the West think it's only the mind that's the most important part. But the body is actually a very helpful kind of tool, right? It kind of helps us to know that we're quote unquote cued in, right? That we're relaxed, that we're at ease. Right? This relationship to a more embodied experience is a helpful way for us to be able to really kind of have a better sense as to what is going on in my practice. And so how do we know whether or not we're awakened? Usually one's mentors or guides or teachers can kind of help confirm this, right? Because sometimes we'll feel that we're awakened and we're not. And if we did that, and then, it might be a disaster for other people. And so and I'll just get to these last questions in the text and then to the raised hands. So after you exhale, then you inhale again. You don't have to hold for so long, but just do what feels comfortable with your body. And then Jonah asked whole body breathing with the lights or concentrate on the mind with blue light, for example, whatever feels good. So the thing is, awareness of white. So it's not that you have to actually imagine that you're inhaling milk and then it transforms into some other thing, and then you exhale blue light, literally. Right? It can be more of a kind of abstract kind of relationship to it. And it can be the whole body if you like, or it could just be, the sensation of the colors as well. So I'd like to get to some of the raised hands. Jane, what's on your mind?
You want to put me on, George? Or no? George? Oh, well.
Oh, we can hear you.
Yeah, but you usually put it on the screen, but that's okay.
Okay.
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
I just first want to thank you. That was really, really powerful and wonderful and very interesting based on an experience I had this past weekend. So I want to ask you a question because I'd like to hear a little bit more about you. You talked about dedicating or committing to this practice, and I think that's very interesting because I think that happens naturally. So the experience was I had oral surgery, and as I was being drilled and all that, I was meditating and I was humming. And halfway through, the dentist, the oral surgeon, and the tech thanked me because my humming calmed them down.
Mm-hmm.
And I just was fascinated by the interplay between it's not dedication, it's just that it happens naturally. It's like it's always there for me. And he just was so shocked how I had no pain. I had nothing. I was just totally in bliss. And he said, I've never had a patient like you before. I wish more people would learn how to meditate.
Yes.
And it was just really, not just reassuring, but knowing that this is so much a part of my body, my spirit, my mind, my whole being, that it just happens naturally. So I'm curious if you can speak a little bit more of making that dedication, because I never really made the dedication. It just happened.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, what you're describing is great. And the fact that you've never had to consciously make this like decision is also a good thing, right? So it's not a problem. I'll give you an example of where it becomes hard for people. For example, I used to teach meditation to correction officers in New York City jails. And what would often happen there was it was during people's workday. There would be a break offered for people that wanted to engage in meditation practice, and I would come in and lead them. And as I would lead them into the experience of meditation, what would they experience? Their minds, right? They would experience whatever minds and bodies, right? So sometimes if they correction officers I was working with had worked two shifts in a row, right? So they'd already worked maybe 16 hours, and then they had to work a little bit more. They would be tired. Maybe they would be anxious about that, or frustrated, or angry, or fed up. Or maybe something was going on at home, some kind of stressor that they were bringing to work. And then I'd ask them to, sit with their mind. And what would they come to experience? That, right? And so oftentimes I would hear people say, thanks, but no thanks, right? This isn't for me, right? This doesn't feel right. And it's a great position to be in, because then you're forced to have to be able to articulate meditation's not the problem. Right? You are very raw, or you are feeling a lot, or there is a lot of experience on your plate, right? And we typically, when humans, we could say broadly speaking, when we feel like there's too much going on or too much on our plate, we tend to want to look away, right? And in those moments, then of course it makes sense that people would say, well, no, I'm never doing this again. Thanks, but no thanks. I never want to see you again, kind of thing. So the dedication piece, even at a later point in time in our practice, uh, can still show up, because if we feel that this practice is worthy of my time, I will do it more, right? So it shows up even in this way too. But so Garb Dorje's point here really is like, if you want the fruit, you have to make some sort of effort to experience it. Right? If you don't want the fruit, no problem. Just go on. But the world is filled with more people who don't want than want, because it's hard, right? It's hard to, have our eyes open sometimes to pain or suffering, or like your experience, going to an oral surgeon and having someone, drill or chip away at your mouth. And all of the experiences, physical and emotional that arise. So that's what he's getting at. He's like, if you want to go further, you have to make the decision.
I also think it takes seeing that suffering is growth.
Mhm.
And so we have a tendency to label things bad, good, and I just think for me, my whole life, suffering has been a blessing. It's a gift. You learn so much about life through suffering and can grow and learn. So I don't see it as suffering. I see it more as, what can I get from this? What is it? What is it bringing me? Where am I going with this? I don't
Yeah,
know. So I want to
absolutely.
thank you. That was
Yeah,
really
no, thank you, Jane. I appreciate it. Frederick. I think you're muted still. Oh no. Yeah, we can't hear you. I don't. I'm sorry.
Well, Frederick, maybe
oh.
you can just restart, leave the session and come in again. Maybe you can put your sound back.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Try and come back. And in the meantime, we'll do the next. So Saki, if I'm pronouncing that right.
Thank you, Justin. Yeah, thinking about this practice, what I've noticed, like for example, when I'm sitting then, is what comes up, what events come up, are usually kind of thoughts, speculation, rehearsing some nonsense. But what really affects me in my everyday life off the mat are those strong emotions, you know, usually projected onto someone else, or and then afterwards I was realised why did I hook that sadness or anger onto that person? Once it's died down, I think, well, that's me, it's not them. But then when I just return to the mat, those really strong emotions don't come up when I'm on the mat. So I'm thinking, if I'm going to use this practice to think, well, these are my suffering in everyday life, there must be seeds somewhere in a sitting practice. So I'm thinking, you know, how to kind of address that with this practice. Any thoughts?
Yeah, no, this is a really great question. So there's a benefit of having a balanced relationship to this practice, some of which, you know, we do in formal sessions. And you're right, you know, no one's going to come in and berate you in your home, especially if you can lock the door and you're all alone. So there's this piece. When we're practicing on our own at home formally, I think the thing we can really kind of spend some good quality time getting into is understanding the responsiveness of mind. So it's often said within the context of Dzogchen that the mind is naturally responsive. Right? And a good metaphor for this is if we were to be down by a really placid body of water and then we threw a rock into it. And if we did, right, there would be the blip and then the ripples, right? And the ripples are kind of like, you know, after an event happens, could be physical, right? A leg spasm or something, or a leg falls asleep, but causes thought activity to arise, or thoughts or emotions or whatever. To sit directly, you know, with our quote unquote eyes on what's happening and to watch this kind of, you know, responsive nature of mind. And so on the cushion, so to speak, we can get very deep in terms of really appreciating these kind of mechanics of the way the mind works. And then if you go out into the work environment or off the cushion, as it were, this is the place to really begin to kind of experiment with how this responsive quality of mind plays out in real time, often in with much more dramatic things, right? So if it's a work situation and you're with a supervisor who tends to not necessarily be as thoughtful as they could be, right? Then there's the kind of, you know, cognitive dissonance and emotional feedback that happens in being that in that kind of relationship. And while we're in the midst of that, to really look at what is playing out here, right? What is playing out? And then how, like, you know, can I let that pebble just dive right in without there being a lot of reactivity, right? Can I just let this situation happen? And I don't need to necessarily always respond, right? And sometimes the response is my own oh, you can't talk to me this way. Who do you think you are, right? Or some other thing. There's an instruction I sometimes like to give to people, which is along the lines of trying to listen to and experience things as if you're experiencing them for the first time. So when we're in a situation like that, there's never anything to really kind of compare it to, right? And then our experience of that thing in the moment shifts, right? There's a greater amount of curiosity, but more than that, there's more spaciousness through which we can allow things to just be what they are without us needing to constantly kind of compare. And like Zoom is a perfect medium for this. Like, there are 4 pages here of faces in the size of the box I have now. And so you can compare all of these little boxes, like who has the nicest looking apartment or whatever, right? And that categorization never helps, right? Like it never really helps us, at least in terms of being able to move through time and space in a really effortless way. So is that helpful? Kind of like treating these in that way?
Because it's cultivating the practice of thinking about the mind as a crystal ball that is pure, and these thoughts arise, and how I respond to that in the sitting practice, even if it's much milder, and trying to cultivate that practice to take it out into the living world, the other world, and seeing if I can bring the practice to that as if this is a new experience. It's rising up. How can I respond to that and just let it fall like a stone? That's the practice.
Yes. As opposed to going to work and quickly running home to sit in meditation in the privacy of my own home to kind of turn everything off, right? And I think all of us at some point have had a relationship to meditation practice like that, where we use it as a defense mechanism, or as an inoculation from the intensity of what I've been experiencing. But really, like, the meditation is really about learning how to be able to be much more articulated and deeply connected to everything that's happening around us, no matter how chaotic it might be. It takes us a while, though, to kind of to get a level of comfort and trust if that's the case.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, Frederick, let's see.
Hello.
Perfect.
Hey, buddy. All right. Thanks for whoever suggested just to turn it on and off. I'll remember that for if that ever happens to me again. Infinite blessings, dude. This has just been an honor. You're beautiful, dude. So you said that we often create suffering for ourselves, and there's probably a whole bag of goodies to talk about there, but specifically, how do we do that, and what are some examples?
Okay, so we create suffering for ourselves.
Sorry. The third part of the question is, and how do we know when we're doing that?
Okay, that's a good question. So have you ever felt or told yourself, I don't have the capacity to hold this right now?
Oh, yeah, there have been a lot of times for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a good example of a place. So, or why are you doing this to me? Don't you see? So I'm just going to act out some kind of scenarios. So one of these is, you're the problem, not me. So all of the times where we are externalizing our problems or externalizing a situation, right? Oh, it's this, it's that, it's my neighbor, it's, this other thing. Yes, there can be irritants, that are, somebody says something disrespectful to you or is rude or all this. Yes, there's somebody involved in that, right? But what we do with that, where we go with that, and the narratives that we end up creating from that have a lot to do with or are, in a way, a manifestation of causing an element of suffering. You could even probably go so far as to say a kind of spiritual self-harm, right? By saying, oh gosh, this person, I'm never gonna be able to relate to this person. I'm no good, they're no good, the situation is broken, but dot 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 dot. So a lot of narrative creation is you could say kind of like a symptom of not being totally aware of what's really kind of playing out. Right? I had a teacher, he passed away in 2007, who was really like literally a master of this kind of meditation. And when I would spend time with him, it was as if he really never cared about what was ever going on, no matter how how good it was or how bad the situation was. He was just very kind of open. The phrase that comes to mind is easy breezy, right? He was just like, oh, what can I do? Um, and I found that always very refreshing to be around, because in our kind of modern Western kind of milieu, where if the situation isn't right, we have to make it better, have to make it better, have to make it better. But so I guess what I'm getting at is, if you can just let things be as they are without needing to shift them or transform them or change them, then you're moving in the right direction. If there needs to be a constant betterment of the situation, right, it means that we're still holding on to an idea that it needs to be better, right? Or that it needs to be optimized. Like, this is where, so Dzogchen translates as great perfection or great completion, meaning it's already complete. The words that come out of your mouth are already complete. The thought
Right.
that arises is already perfect, right? Even the response is already perfect. It's already complete, right? So what this means is that we end up having to be forced with having to reconcile a tonality of constantly needing to shift things or upend things or change things or make them other than what they actually are in the moment. So like, imagine like this earth, right? We're on this earth, and each one of us is like a little world system, and we're all suffering, right? But if you were on the moon looking at the earth, and you see this beautiful blue pearl in the middle of space, right? It's just being. The earth is being, all of us are just happening. And yet the context that we're creating, the constant conflict, constant reactivity, constant reinforcement of you're like this, I'm like this, and this situation is like that, and that's the suffering. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
A lot of that was really perfect. Now, here's the thing. You hit like a really big nail on the head, in a weird way. So my whole life, if you could sum up my entire like reason for existing, okay, it's to make the world fucking amazing. I have this vision for everything being, so I have this philosophy that everything is 5% away from being fucking amazing. Like, even like literally anything you look at. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time because I'm on the spot. Let me backtrack a little bit without digressing into that. It's just a simple idea. So I'm constantly improving things in my mind. I'm constantly going out of my way to make sure that relationships are improving and that I can do everything I can do for us to all get on the same page, because I believe fully that we all agree on everything 100% of the time. It's just about context and nuance and the time and energy that would take to connect all the pieces and to really see eye to eye and to be looking at the same exact thing clearly takes a lot of effort and would take some profound global enlightenment, kind of utopia, kind of like when we are more kind of psychic and relating with hearts and feelings and that kind of a thing more. So really, until then, I'm here to help that all happen. And I in every moment, in every argument and anger and everything, I'm searching for the love. I'm guiding us all towards that love. It's always there in every moment, in the perfection and making everything shiny and perfect and efficient and beautiful for the whole world. It's all there, and we're so close to it. So what am I doing there to create suffering for myself when I'm just on a fucking mission?
So put your feet up and relax. Like the view, right? The goal is beautiful, right? The work, right? An amount of work is important, right? But none of this hinges on one person, right? This is a collective kind of situation that you're talking about, especially. And so each person ideally needs to be able to open up to their own natural liberation, right? And we can't force it. We can't make it happen for other people. The same way, it's hard enough to make it happen for ourselves with force. This is why I liked, working in corrections when I did, was there's just all this talk of use of force. And it made me get very interested about how we use force by leading our meditation. Like in courts, when they talk about leading a witness, right? You're basically trying to make them make a particular kind of argument. Oftentimes when we're in meditation, we're trying to do that. We do that too, right? We're not actually sitting in that open perfection. We're obsessed with the idea of getting to the open, or the perfect perfection, right? And so as long as there are ideas about things, then there are ideas about how it's supposed to look, right? How this manifest evolution of humanity is supposed to arise. And I think there's oftentimes, for me at least, greater freedom in trusting into the inevitability of it without having to be down in the kind of trenches pulling it, right? There's suffering in that.
Okay, so it's more letting it happen and going along for the ride and just having fun, kind of just, and even in arguments, it's about letting things be and kind of maybe picking your battles and knowing when to take a step back and to I'm hearing a lot more into what you're saying. That was really good guidance. Thank you.
I think that this isn't going to be the most musical to many people's ears, but I like to make this point from time to time, right? The perfection of all things doesn't need us at all, because everything is naturally that way.
But aren't I a part of the perfection? I don't think things need to be better. I do think they're perfect. And I think my being here trying to make things better is perfect. And just making sure that I'm not creating any unnecessary suffering. You said something about kind of gliding through life a little bit more, you know what I mean? And so trying to tune up a bit, that was kind of where the question was coming from.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It's a great question. I think we can all benefit from easing into a bit more non-doing and a lot more trusting.
I have to say something, then I can be done, and thank you guys so much for holding this time for me. I was listening to something earlier. Alan Watts was talking about how he was talking about a Japanese komodo and how comfortable they were. Okay. He's on a rant. And so then he goes, robes are going to become very important in the future. He said, because with the work week getting shorter because of automation, we're all going to have to, and these are the words he used, we're all going to have to learn to dawdle and be oh, it was such a good word. I actually texted it to my wife. It's right here. He said, well, that's not fair for me to say, saunter. He said, we are all going to have to learn to dawdle and saunter because otherwise we're going to get ourselves into trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think like to his point, slowing down, being relaxed, trusting. It's like there's that kids, I guess, what is it, like a nursery rhyme or something? Inch by inch, row by row, gonna make that garden grow, right? It's just like slowly, slowly, each, and this is what Garb Dorje is pointing out too. Just come back to meditation, come back to it, come back, come back to your natural state, come back to your perfection, come back to your natural state.
Yeah.
And then, a little bit like what Jane said, at some point it clicks, it begins to come together. It's abstract and effortful until it becomes effortless.
Starting to see that it's going to. I actually had a moment earlier, right before I hopped on, and I'm like, I can see it, that it's like I can see it starting to slide in a little bit into like being more fluid. Like I can start to see something in my mind where there's this softening and sort of like smoothing out and like or more like almost like it becomes so okay, so it's like a muscle, right? Over and over and over, back, all throughout the day, hundreds of times. And it's amazing. But the idea is that, okay, so it's a muscle, and eventually you do it without effort, and it becomes a natural thing, and it sort of just takes over. And before you realize it, you're just fully focusing on your breath and fully aware and going about your day and loving life and being a beautiful, amazing person and saving the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, both end. Right? Both end. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Great.
Well, so thank you so much for this. Peace. So much love.
Thank you, Frederick. Thank you.
Okay. Right on.
Erica.
Oh, hey. Thanks everyone for being here. I had a kind of an interesting moment this week and tomorrow with Martin Luther King Day coming. One of the things he said that I love is, the measure of, I would say, I'm the measure of a person's character, or you could even say meditation, is not so much under comfort and convenience, but under contention and controversy. And that's when, I really get a chance to, it's like, how's my driving? You see those bumper stickers. So this is on the brain because I'm going through something that's really difficult involving the legal system. And I had to book a hotel room, a corporate hotel room, near the courthouse. And I had to make an adjustment. And of course, I'm sent reeling to the other side of the world to South Africa. And my big bugaboo where I lose my patience is with AI, people reading from an AI script. And I think, so I'm not the only one. It's almost comical. But the accent was so lovely and sing-songy, and I made this connection. I spoke to one guy, I said, can you check with in Westchester? He says, well, I'll have to put you on hold. And he came back, he couldn't hear me. I had to call back again. I spoke to his colleague. I said, where did Shepard go? He said he went out to lunch. I said, oh my God. I feel less important than a sandwich. And she laughed, and she was able to help me. And I resisted the part of me that just wanted to sort of take it out on this faceless person. And here's the irony, up on my screen, I don't know if you can see this photograph.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see this?
Mhm.
Okay, this has been up on my refrigerator for pretty much years now. And I sort of have a little sort of global suffering corner with, you know, to remind myself, puts my problems like into perspective. And of course, this is taken in the 70s in the Soweto. And I said, I'd love to visit South Africa. I had this yearning to just transcend AI and the like world apart and have a real human experience. And we were talking about music and such while she was able to help me. And I said, I have this, I love the music, the natural world in South Africa. And of course, the incredible struggle, about with apartheid. Massive journey. Certainly Nelson Mandela had his meditative moments on Robbins Island, I'm sure. So I said, I have this photo on my refrigerator, but I don't know who's in the photograph. And I described the photograph to her, and she says, "Oh, that's Hector Peterson." And I said, "What?" And she said, "Oh, this is apparently the photograph that was heard around the world that sparked the change. Just like that little girl, in Vietnam, just running doused with napalm." And it turns out now the young girl next to him was his sister, Hector Peterson. It was the young 13-year-old who was shot, and Mabusa, who's carrying him, the 18-year-old kid who's carrying him, consequently disappeared. And I researched it. And then I said, well, we have a photograph like that here of Emmett Till.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose it's up for me because it's Martin Luther King Day tomorrow. And she says, I don't know about Emmett Till. And I could hear her typing and learning about who Emmett Till is. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, I'm much older now. I can't be on the front lines in the way that I used to when I was a kid. But this was a way of catching myself in that moment, that impulse of frustration, just changing the narrative, like having the speech be changed. And it was quite incredible, because I learned something and she learned something. And, I realized, well, I could have turned this photograph over and I would have gotten a little more information, but not the depth of what that was and what it really meant in the world. So it feels like a moment off the cushion that, it could have gone either way, but I had a choice,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know. And so I think what meditation teaches me is that I always have a choice, even if sometimes it feels like a Sophie's choice. So
Yes. No, and I really, like this point. And again, this is also what Garb Dorje is kind of pointing out, is like there is this element. I mean, in one way, maybe he's saying like we all have agency, which is a really kind of contemporary way of saying that in this moment, whatever it is that I'm experiencing, we have this opportunity. We're not always conscious of it because usually our reactivity is so fast, right? I've already written a person off. I've already, words have already come out of my mouth, or I've already begun to label, oh, this person is this or that or this, right? But the reality of the situation is that all of us constantly have the opportunity to break that cycle, right? And that's what this kind of, style of meditation is about. It's this kind of, these kinds of terms, they're a little played out, but it's, about radical presence and radical acceptance, right? And there have been a lot of points in the chat box about all of the ways people are going to continue to show up to make the world a better place. And I think that's essential and it's important. And the point isn't to not do that. But when we do that and we're learning how to be able to articulate a relationship to radical acceptance or radical presence, where we can actually be open to what is arising, as well as our own reactivity in the moment, then we become a lot better honed as agents of change, right? Because we're not acting from a place of suffering, right? We're acting from a place of trying to inhabit an awakened, right, a free, a liberated relationship to my own mind, but then also to whatever the situation is at hand, whether it be, working for human rights and working against racism or sexism or patriarchy or homophobia or anything like this, or working to address the environmental crisis or any other kind of societal ills. The friction that causes a burnout has a lot to do with our own reactivity. And the more we can hone ourselves to be open, clear, dynamically present, able to experience everything that arises without refeeding, this samsara feedback loop, the more we're able to offer an alternative. So yes, be able to co-regulate. Very nicely said. Yeah. Yeah, some of this is in modern tantric Buddhism, and I am in the process of writing another book, so it'll be in that too. Nice thumb. Yeah. So
Thank you.
yeah, and thank you, Erica. I really appreciate it. Yeah, well, I know that we're over time.
We are.
Yeah.
I
So
didn't want to cut anyone, but we're really over time this
yeah.
session. So, but yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, just wanted to thank you all, and sorry for those who have to leave because we went over our usual time. But thank you for your presence. Thank you, Justin, for a wonderful session. And maybe just before we leave, you can open up your mics and say goodbye to each other in your own voice, language.
Thank you, Al.
See you somewhere.
Thank you, Justin.
Bye.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Mark, for letting us go over.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Next week.
You. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's good.
Be well.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Gracias, muchas gracias.
Obrigado.
You all. Gracias. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you.